In step 3, we're going to take care of those people that might not have any payments. There are no such customers, but if a customer doesn't have any payments, we are not going to capture those in here. So we could have potentially a customer that has orders but no payments yet. But since we have an inner join here, we're only keeping customers that are both in the order table and the payment table. So what we need to do is we need to change this to left outer join, and then need to take care of potential payments that are null. So if we do left outer join, we're saying keep every single row from this subquery, from the orders, and also get information from payments if there is a matching row. If there is no matching row, still keep the order information, but return null values here. So then in our calculation, if we have a value here in total orders, but we don't have a value here, we have a null value. Well, when I do calculation with null values, that returns a null, because it's basically saying a value minus a null value, I have no idea what that is. I don't know if it's a positive number, a negative number, it could be anything. So it returns a null value. So here, therefore, we need to use COALESCE to take care of this. Or we could use like a case when. I'm going to add COALESCE here, comma 0. And COALESCE, again, simply saying, okay, I'm going to take a look at these things you're giving me here in order. I'm going to start with this one. And if that's a null value, I'm going to skip that one. But if it has an actual value, then I'm going to return that value, and I'm not going to continue on. I'm only going to look over here if this doesn't have a value. So if this doesn't have a value, then I'm going to move over to this next one. And this could be another field. It could be anything, as long as it's something that potentially returns a value. And then if this has a value, then I'm going to return that instead. And 0 is a value. It's not a null value. So basically, is this null? Then move on to here. Is this not null? Then return this. If this is null and I moved on to here, then return this as long as that is not null. And I could continue. I could have another comma here and have another value. And then I'm still displaying this value over here. So I'm going to go ahead and coalesce that too. I guess in this column I could have just a null value to indicate that, but I'm going to 0 over there. All right. Then in the next part of the problem, now we're going to consider state and also those limit things that we had. So I'm going to go ahead and continue building on this one. So I'm going to copy this. So I'm going to start by working on the thing where we restrict what states they're coming from. And since this is kind of my main table, I'm going to put a where statement in here. So by doing that, when I'm running subqueries, I'm telling SQL to run this subquery and this subquery first before I do anything like joining those two together. So by restricting the number of rows that are returned by the subqueries, I end up joining fewer rows together. And that simply makes things more effective when it comes to running the query. So I'm going to add my where statement in here. So I'm going to say where, and then I'm going to say state. And normally when I do subqueries, I usually use the S here, right? For subquery A, subquery B. So I'm going to go ahead and change that on all these. Coming from the customer table, quantity, and that is coming from the sales order line table, which is SB. Do we have all of them now? And that's coming from the customer table, which was C. So I'm going to go ahead and run this and just make sure I didn't mess up any of my aliases. Oh, I just started typing the where statement without completing. Get rid of that, and then we'll try it again. All right, so that's working. So here in the where statement then, I'm going to start by typing where, and I wanted to say that's the state is in Kansas, Colorado, or Utah. And the state is in the customers table. So that's SC. And then it's called state. And then it's just simply in and then my list of those states. And that's going to be Kansas, Colorado, and Utah. And now let's go ahead and run that. So it says the state doesn't exist in customers table. So that's probably in the locations table. So do we need to pull another table? Let's look at the ERD diagram. Right, so in the customers table, I do not have state. Let's see if I have it in the header table here. I don't. So I need to go into the locations table to get this. So let's go ahead and add another join then with the location table. And that's going to be D on SC dot customer ID equals SD customer ID. And since I did an inner join earlier on the customer IDs, I could have done SA here, but I kind of feel like the join is coming from the customers table, not from the orders table. But it could have been either one. All right, let's now try it. Oh, and I need to change this to SD. Now run it, and now we're getting results. And it's much fewer rows than we had before. So these are the only customers in those three states. All right, and then finally the The last thing we want to do was to do the offset and limit. So we're going to consider that too. The offset and limit has to be done on the difference between total orders and total customer payments. So I can't do that in one of my subqueries. So I'm going to have to place that outside of the subqueries. So I'm going to do that at the very bottom here. So I'm going to do an order by, and we're ordering by net, and I'm going to order that in descending order because we wanted the customers with the largest differences. Well, not quite the largest, but the 6th through the 15th largest. So I need to offset this by 5 to get down to the 6th row, and then I need to limit 10. And then if we run this now, you get 10 customers with the largest net differences in Kansas, Colorado, and Utah. So something odd here is I have a negative net number, and that could actually be someone could have paid more than they ordered, but that sounds a little bit odd. And it's also kind of surprising that's for number 1, which is one of those parent organizations. So let's go ahead and look at what's happening here. I'm going to troubleshoot this one a little bit. And it turns out, if I look at this, that I'm joining here based on customer ID from the customers table to the customer's ID in the location table. The problem with this is that when we're talking about the orders, the customer ID in the orders table is the one that ordered it, not the one that paid for it. So we again need to use this default build to customer ID in this join right here. So we're going to be careful with that. All right, and in addition to changing this, well, let's go ahead and see the results. So that now makes more sense. We have all positive net numbers here. And if we take away this offset and limit, and so we see all the results, notice that there are no negative, which would be a little bit surprising. It's definitely possible, but it would be surprising. And then in addition, maybe we actually want to see the states too that these customers are in. So I'm going to go ahead and add state to this. So if I do that, it's going to come from the A subquery, and I'm going to get an error message if I do this, but I'm going to go ahead and run this so you can see that there's an error message. So it says state does not exist. Well, I haven't output that in the select statement here, so I need to just add that to the select statement to make that available to the outer query. And that's not from A, that's from the customers, actually it's from the locations table, says SD. And I'm going to get an error message again now, but I'm going to run it so you see the error message here. So it's saying that SD, since this is a group by statement aggregate function, either I need to apply an aggregate function to this or I need to group by state. And since each customer is only in one state, it's safe to group by that in addition to the customer ID. I'm not going to create duplicate customer IDs by doing that. So if I run this now, I should be able to get my state, my customer ID, the state, and then what is the net